Welcome to the Cabinet of Science and Fiction.
It's great to be diving into this one today. We're putting on our virtual goggles, you could say, and heading straight into Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash, a novel from 1992.
Right, 1992. It feels like ancient history in tech terms, but this book, it wasn't just another cyberpunk story, was it? It feels almost like a prophecy.
Absolutely. It laid down so much groundwork for the last 30 years of digital life, really.
That's exactly what we want to unpack today. How did this one book, written before most of us were even seriously online, manage to nail so many things? We're talking about coining metaverse, yes, but also predicting crypto, avatars being central, this kind of corporate fragmentation we see.
Even the way language itself could be weaponized, the social polarization. It's all in there.
And we've got a lot to draw on Stephenson's own thoughts looking back, academic work on simulation, digital ethics. It should give us a pretty full picture.
It's quite a task he pulled off, synthesizing all that. But maybe before we get into the predictions, we should just paint a picture of the world itself. Because it's completely bizarre.
Bizarre is a good word. The actual physical world in Snow Crash. It's America, but it's totally fractured, decentralized.
Yeah, fractured is putting it mildly. The U.S. government as we know it, basically gone, doesn't exist anymore in the story.
So who's in charge?
Well, that's the thing. Power isn't centralized. It's all devolved to these huge corporate franchises and these fortified private communities. Franchulates, he calls them.
Franchulates. Okay.
And they operate like, sometimes like little countries, sometimes honestly like criminal outfits, their own rules, their own security, even their own money sometimes.
And the main character, hero protagonist, he's right in the middle of this mess.
Oh, absolutely. He perfectly embodies this weird collision of high-tech and total breakdown. I mean, in the metaverse, he's a legend, supposedly the greatest sword fighter there is.
But in the real world.
In the real world, where he, needs to actually eat and survive, he delivers pizzas. He's a deliverator for, wait for it, the mafia.
Which is also a corporation, right? Pizzas Cosa Nostra, Inc.
Exactly. It's this perfect, absurd blend, and that's the core tension, isn't it? This world collapsing into poverty and anarchy, but simultaneously having this incredibly advanced tech everywhere.
Like Hero's delivery car.
Right. It's this super high-tech, voice-controlled, maybe even nuclear-powered thing built for speed, dodging threats, just to deliver a pizza in what's essentially a failed state.
That contrasts the amazing tech and the social chaos that really sets the stage for everything else, doesn't it?
It's the foundation. You have to understand that backdrop to get why the metaverse becomes so important and also so contested.
Okay, so let's start with the big one, the term everyone knows now. The metaverse. Stephenson coined it.
He did. And he also really popularized the term avatar for your digital self. I mean, others might have used avatar before, but he made it stick in this context. That alone is a huge linguistic footprint.
Absolutely huge. So how did he actually describe the metaverse in the book? Was it complex?
Surprisingly simple, actually. Just a computer-generated universe. You accessed it through your computer, obviously, but specifically using goggles and a heads-up display, a HUD.
Simple, but it sounds different from what came before, like William Gibson's cyberspace.
Very different, and that's key. Gibson's cyberspace, which definitely influenced Stephenson, was often portrayed as more abstract, like data streams, lines of light, this consensual hallucination in a non-physical space.
Right, very ethereal.
Exactly. Stephenson's metaverse, though, it was grounded. It was designed to feel familiar, almost mundane in its structure. It had streets, buildings, parks. You walked around in a defined body, your avatar. It wasn't abstract data. It was a simulated place.
And that tangibility, that feeling of place, that's what made tech people latch onto it.
Yeah.
As something they could actually build.
I think so, yeah. It wasn't just a cool idea. It felt like a design spec, something you could aim for. It made the future feel, recognizable, even if it was virtual.
But the idea of virtual reality itself, that goes back way further, doesn't it?
Oh, much further. You can trace the core concept, this immersive simulated world, back to Stanley G. Weinbaum's story, Pygmalion Spectacle from 1935. That's really where you see the idea of experiencing a simulated world through multiple senses take shape.
Wow, 1935. How does the science side define VR today?
Well, if you look at, say, Bourdieu and Coiffe's work, virtual reality technology, they define it as a computer graphics simulation. But crucially, it's one that looks realistic and responds to you, the user, your gestures, your voice commands. It reacts in real time. It's dynamic.
They also had that concept of the three eyes, right, to capture the essence of VR.
Yeah, the I3. Interactivity, immersive, and imagination.
Okay, unpack those.
So interactivity is just that. The system has to react to you. Immersive is about the sensory feedback, making you feel present in that digital space. But imagination, that's the really interesting one for the metaverse.
Why is that?
Because imagination is what lets the virtual world break free from physical limits. In Snow Crash, the main street of the metaverse is, like, theoretically endless. It can always be expanded, always have new things added. It's only limited by the imagination of the creators, not by physics. That's a powerful idea.
It really is.
Yeah.
And this leap into highly realistic, potentially infinite simulations,
Mm.
it connects directly to some pretty heavy philosophy, doesn't it?
Mm.
Like Nick Bostrom's simulation hypothesis.
Exactly. Bostrom's paper from 2003, it poses this fascinating trilemma about advanced sort of post-human civilizations, ones with massive computing power.
What's the trilemma?
He basically argues one of three things is likely true. Either A, civilizations like that almost always wipe themselves out before reaching that stage, or B, they reach it, but choose not to run huge numbers of ancestor simulations, maybe for ethical reasons,
Or C.
or C, we are almost certainly living in one of those simulations right now.
Okay, wow. So if C is true,
Then the odds are stacked heavily against us being in the original base reality. If a civilization can make simulations indistinguishable from reality, and they likely make millions of them, well, statistically, we're probably inside one.
now that's a heavy thought. And Bostrom has this related idea that makes the metaverse feel even more plausible, right? Substrate independence.
Yes, that's crucial. Substrate independence is the idea that consciousness, mental states, they don't necessarily need a biological brain. They can theoretically run on any sufficiently complex substrate, silicon, quantum computers, whatever. It's the pattern, the computation, not the wetware, that matters.
So the mind isn't tied to the body.
Fundamentally, no, according to this theory. And that perfectly explains Hero's experience, right? His consciousness in the metaverse is just as real to him as his physical existence. The lines blur because functionally the substrate doesn't matter.
It's fascinating how Stephenson sets up this really deep philosophical idea, substrate independence, and then immediately slams it into, well, capitalism, the metaverse might be infinite, but it's got class structures from day one.
Yeah, the irony is thick, isn't it? It's supposed to be this escape, but it just replicates, even exaggerates, real-world inequality. Your avatar instantly signals your status.
How so?
Well, if you're powerful or have resources, like Hero, you get a slick custom avatar, detailed, high-res. But if you're accessing it through, say, a public terminal, cheap hardware, you get stuck with the default.
Which licks?
Jerky, grainy, black and white, instantly marks you out as low status. So yeah, it's a computer world, but it's still got a brutal digital divide built right in.
And the space itself isn't public domain, it's all owned.
Completely. Every square inch, every digital object, it's all private property, belongs to corporations, individuals. It's hyper-capitalism gone virtual. And the way the world feels endless, that's part of the design too. It uses fractal programming.
Okay, fractal programming. How does that work to create this illusion?
Right, so fractals are these mathematical patterns where the pattern repeats itself no matter how closely you zoom in. Self-similarity, they call it. So you can use a relatively small set of rules, a seed, to generate incredibly complex, natural-looking landscapes, mountains, coastlines, whatever, that seem to go on forever with infinite detail.
So it's an efficient way to fake infinity, basically. Make it feel like the world never ends, no matter how far you go.
Exactly. It reinforces that illusion of boundless space.
Yeah.
And when you combine that with people spending hours in the metaverse to escape their grim reality, well, there are psychological effects.
Like losing track of what's real.
Pretty much. Some analyses suggest that spending so much time in a world with different rules, different possibilities, can actually mess with your ability to distinguish the simulated from the non-simulated.
And what does that do to someone?
It can create this kind of imbalance, cognitive, emotional. You might start preferring the virtual because you have more control, it's more stimulating. Then reality feels even worse when you come back, which just makes you want to log back in even more. It's a cycle.
This blurring, this instability, it feels like the core theme is just chaos, both inside and outside the machine.
Absolutely. Chaos is everywhere. The word itself, from the Greek chaos, meaning like a void, a gap, it perfectly describes the situation. In the real world, you see it in the total breakdown of the U.S., this power vacuum filled by corporations and gangs. That's societal chaos.
Yep. And hero dodging explosions to deliver a pizza.
Textbook. Physical chaos. But it's just as present in the metaverse. It can be glitches, unexpected bugs, or deliberate attacks. like the snow crash virus itself.
The virus, let's get into that. It's not just code, it's something more fundamental.
It's terrifyingly clever. The name snow crash comes from that old term for a total system meltdown, where the screen just turns to static, like a blizzard.
Right.
But the virus in the book isn't just crashing computers, it's crashing brains. It's delivered through multimedia, could be video, audio, even just text, and it triggers what Stephenson calls a neuro-linguistic hack.
Meaning it uses language itself to attack the brain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It exploits the very structure of how our brains process language and sensory information. It causes this massive overload leading to actual brain damage.
And it hits hackers and coders hardest, right?
Yeah.
Why them?
Because their brains are already, in a way, optimized for processing abstract systems, logic, code. They have a highly developed structure for that kind of thinking. The virus targets that specific neurological wiring. It finds the vulnerability in their strength.
We see it happen to Day 5 at one of the founders of the Black Sun Club in the Metaverse.
Yeah. That scene is chilling. This sort of low-res avatar walks up to Daph's high-res one and just shows him this scroll. Basically a long string of ones and zeros.
Is it binary code?
To us, maybe. But David's brain reads it, it processes it as information, as language, and the effect is instant. His face goes blank. When Hero asks him what it said, he just mumbles just a bunch of babble. Then his avatar glitches out, starts speaking static, and in the real world,
It collapses.
seizure then lapses into speaking complete gibberish glossolalia. The book even writes it out, this stream of nonsensical syllables. It's like his language center has been completely scrambled.
And this hack is powerful enough to affect even someone like N, the mafia guy, who's heavily augmented.
Right. Aang is this extreme example of merging human and machine. He's got so many implants, his nervous system is so tied into his tech that he literally feels what his avatar feels. The boundary is almost gone.
So the virus can cross that boundary too.
It seems so. The implication is that the neurolinguistic attack is so fundamental, it can cause physical harm even in a body that's part biological, part machine. It bypasses the normal barriers.
So the book starts as this tech thriller, but then it takes this huge leap, doesn't it? Into history, linguistics, even religion.
It really does. It pivots dramatically. Hero starts digging into the origin of this linguistic vulnerability. He uses the librarian, this amazing AI knowledge entity in the metaverse.
Walking encyclopedia.
Basically, yeah. And the librarian helps him trace the root of the snow crash effect all the way back to ancient Sumeria, to the Akkadians, and specifically to the Tower of Babel story from Genesis.
The Tower of Babel, how does that connect?
The theory in the novel is that Babel wasn't just about God confusing languages. It suggests there was originally a single universal human language, an Uman language, that was somehow connected to the brain's fundamental operating system. And this language wasn't just for communication. It might have had inherent power, maybe even destructive capabilities.
So the glossolalia, the babbling that the virus causes, it's like a reversion to that state.
Exactly. It's tapping into that deep pre-Babel linguistic structure. And the villain, Elbab Raif, this media mogul, he figures this out. He wants to weaponize that ancient linguistic power, but distribute it through modern digital networks to control people's minds on a massive scale. It shifts the battle from controlling tech to controlling the very foundation of thought and language.
Okay, so the book's scope is just enormous. It makes you think about that idea from Francois Chalet that maybe science fiction writers have the most impact in tech.
Well, Stephenson himself seems to lean into that idea. He's talked about how a sci-fi novel can work better than, say, a corporate memo or a PowerPoint deck. He suggests it can act as a template or a roadmap. It gives engineers, open source groups, whoever, a shared vision, a destination to work towards. It creates a common understanding that's often hard to achieve through traditional business communication.
He had that great analogy, right? Like a magnetic field organizing iron filings.
Exactly that. The story provides the field, and it aligns everyone's efforts. And he believed in this enough to actually co-found the Hieroglyph project.
With Arizona State University.
Yeah. The whole point of that project was to generate sci-fi stories that were deliberately optimistic and useful stories designed to be those kinds of roadmaps for positive technological development, not just warning.
So if Snow Crash was a roadmap looking back 30 years later, what parts of the map turned out to be accurate, besides just the metaverse exists?
Well, a lot of the structural stuff, really. Avatars becoming central to online identity, yeah. The way digital life and commerce completely merged. Hyper-corporatism online. But also, he weirdly nailed the aesthetic.
The aesthetic.
He described the metaverse hotspots as garish and jumbled, full of noise, ads, explosions. Just this chaotic visual mashup. If you look at some of the popular platforms today, that cluttered everything at once vibe is definitely there.
That's true.
And he even anticipated these virtual hubs for niche creative scenes like the character Sushi K or that fictional band Vitaly Chernobyl and the Meltdowns, these underground digital
The
communities.
most unsettling prediction seems to be that mind virus idea, even if he didn't specifically predict Facebook or Twitter.
Right, he admits he was thinking more about TV back then. But the core concept, people losing their intellectual autonomy, their ability to think critically because they're being manipulated by information flows, that feels incredibly relevant now with social media.
How does he connect it?
He talks about how algorithms subtly shift our reality, how they train our brains for that quick dopamine hit, often at the expense of deeper thought. It's not a virus delivered on a scroll, maybe, but the effect, the erosion of independent thinking is disturbingly similar.
Interestingly, though, he thinks he got one major thing wrong about the digital divide.
Yeah, this is fascinating. He expected the visual divide, the rich having great avatars, the poor having terrible ones would be much starker, purely based on the cost of graphics hardware. He thought good graphics would stay expensive.
And they didn't.
Not nearly as much as he thought. He credits things like the surprise success of games like Doom in the 90s and later smartphones with driving down the cost of graphics processing shockingly fast, faster than he anticipated.
So, more equality on the hardware front than he predicted.
In terms of raw graphics power access, yes, but the class divide didn't vanish, did it? It just shifted.
Shifted how?
Instead of being about who could afford the rendering hardware, it became about who can afford the premium digital assets, the expensive NFT skins, the rare virtual items, the Bored Apes. The status symbols just became purely digital rather than tied directly to the display tech. The flexing just moved layered deeper.
Now, one really big difference between the book and today. Snow Crash had one metaverse, right? The street. But today we've got dozens of competing platforms.
Yeah, that's a major point of contention for the purists, including Stephenson and other pioneers like Tony Parisi. They're pretty adamant there is only the metaverse. Singular.
I mean, it has to be interconnected.
Exactly. Parisi's view is that the defining feature must be interoperability. One single unified virtual space you can move through seamlessly. When companies talk about building their metaverse, they're missing the point. They're just building sophisticated walled gardens, proprietary silos.
So things like Roblox or Meta's Horizon, they're not the metaverse yet.
Not in that original unified sense. They're more like on-ramps, maybe,
Yeah.
potential entry points. The things that feel closest in spirit to Snow Crash right now are probably those huge, chaotic mashup games like Fortnite or Roblox. They have the massive user bases and that specific mashup vibe he described. They might be the places where interoperability eventually gets forced, just out of user demand.
And what about the hardware? The goggles. Stephenson originally assumed VR was essential, but he's changed his tune on that.
Massively. He's very pragmatic about it now. He argues pretty strongly that we absolutely do not need AR and VR to build the metaverse.
Why the shift?
He points at the obvious. Billions of people already navigate complex 3D worlds perfectly fine using 2D screens, phones, laptops, whatever. Our brains adapt. We use keyboard controls, Westridge keys, which he calls Victorian technology originally for typewriters, to move through these incredibly sophisticated spaces.
So VR isn't necessary for the experience.
Not for the core experience of being in a shared 3D space, no. And VR still has huge practical hurdles.
Like motion sickness.
That's a big one. It still affects a significant percentage of people, maybe 5 or 10%, even with the best current tech. As he puts it, try selling TVs if 1 in 10 viewers throws up. It's a massive barrier to mass adoption.
And just the experience of wearing it.
Yeah, the immersion tolerance. You're wearing this thing on your head, you're cut off from your surroundings. Most people can only handle that for relatively short periods, maybe 30, 45 minutes comfortably. It's not like settling in for a multi-hour gaming session on a monitor. The physical demands are just different.
So Stephenson predicted the chaos, but now he's actually stepping in to try and build a better version, or at least a different foundation. But he seems pretty skeptical about how things are currently run online.
Deeply skeptical, especially about that dominant business model, the social media model where, you're the product. Your data is harvested and sold to advertisers. He's very wary of that.
And this connects to that idea of realism capitalism, right? Can you explain that concept again?
Yeah, it's a term often associated with the late Mark Fisher. Realism capitalism is the sort of pervasive feeling that capitalism is the only possible system, that we can't even imagine a real alternative anymore.
And in the metaverse context,
It means we risk just replicating the same old structures. New virtual worlds just become new places to sell virtual stuff, compete for likes or crypto, reinforce existing inequalities. Instead of using the tech to create something genuinely different or maybe even, better, it's a resignation to the status quo just with fancier graphics.
and what fuels that resignation economically?
A big part of it is what Stephenson calls the powerful draw of free stuff. We've become so conditioned to expect online services to be free.
Because we're paying with our data instead of cash.
Exactly. And reversing that expectation, getting people to value their data or pay for services differently, it's incredibly hard. That free model is so entrenched, even though it leads to all sorts of negative consequences. Fighting it is a huge uphill battle.
So his skepticism about that model is what led him to start Lamina One, this new blockchain project.
Precisely. He teamed up with Peter Vecines, who was involved with Bitcoin way back. Lamina One is envisioned as a new Layer 1 blockchain, the fundamental base layer specifically designed for an open metaverse.
Open, meaning not controlled by one company.
Right. And crucially, designed to prioritize creators, the artists, the builders, the programmers. They want it to be like metaverse as a service.
Why build a whole new blockchain? Why not use an existing one?
Their argument is that existing chains often have limitations or are forks of older designs. By building a new Layer 1 from scratch, they can bake in the specific features, and importantly, the financial infrastructure needed for a truly functional metaverse, integrating it directly with the tools creators already use, like the game engines Unity and Unreal.
One huge issue for creators now is AI and intellectual property, right? AI models trained on millions of images without permission or payment.
That's a massive ethical mess, yeah. You have AI like Midjourney or DALL-E creating amazing visuals, but they're built on the uncredited, uncompensated labor of countless artists. Lamina One wants to tackle this head-on.
How?
Using smart contracts to create a transparent and automated value chain. They want to get rid of the incredibly slow, complex, lawyer-heavy system used in Hollywood for distributing revenue, the waterfall.
Okay, what's the waterfall in Hollywood? Why is it bad?
The waterfall is just the sequence of who gets paid when from the gross revenue coming into a film or TV show. It flows down through distributors, producers, investors, and often the actual creative talent is way down at the bottom. It's notoriously slow, opaque, and requires tons of accounting. Artists can wait years to see money, if ever.
And smart contracts would change that how?
Smart contracts execute automatically based on pre-agreed rules. So the idea is if an asset created on Lamina One, say a 3D model, gets sold or used in a game, the revenue could be instantly and automatically distributed to everyone who contributed to its creation in the agreed proportions. No waiting, no complex accounting.
So if I have an idea for a sword, someone else models it, another person textures it, we all get a cut automatically forever.
That's the vision. The blockchain tracks the entire history, the provenance of the asset, from the initial concept right through every modification and use. The smart contract handles the payout based on that history. But there's another crucial piece: rights of approval.
Rights of approval, what does that mean?
It means creators don't just give up control once they put something on the chain. They retain the right to say, no, you can't use my work in that specific project.
Why is that so important?
For ethical control, really. Imagine someone takes your artwork and uses it in something hateful or offensive or just really low quality. Rights of approval give the original creator a way to maintain some integrity over how their IP is used, preventing misuse or association with things they reject. It pushes back against that idea that digital means uncontrollable copying.
Shifting gears a bit, from digital ethics to environmental ones, Stephenson wrote a whole novel about climate change, termination shock. How does that influence Lamina One?
Hugely. He's been very clear that it would be hypocritical to build a metaverse infrastructure that ignores the climate crisis.
Yeah.
So Lamina One is committed to being carbon neutral.
How are they achieving that? Isn't blockchain notoriously energy hungry?
Well, the older ones, like Bitcoin, use proof of work, POW, which is incredibly energy intensive, basically a guessing competition for computers. But Lamina One, like most modern chains, uses proof of stake, POS.
Which is more efficient.
Orders of magnitude more efficient. It doesn't rely on raw computing power in the same way. But they're going further than just choosing PS.
What else?
They're actually designing the system so that the people running the nodes, the computers that maintain the network, will be required to buy a certain amount of verified carbon credits to even participate. They're building climate responsibility right into the operating requirements.
Making it non-optional.
Exactly, because they believe it's simply the right thing to do. And Stephenson stays optimistic about the tech solutions too, pointing to things like terraform industries.
What do they do?
He talks about the falling cost of solar power, making it feasible to power direct air capture of carbon, and then using that captured carbon to synthesize net zero fuels. He sees these engineering trends as a reason for optimism, focusing on innovation rather than just reduction.
So as we wrap up here, it's clear Snow Crash wasn't just prescient about tech. It wove together history, language, politics, computer science. It really earned its place as a classic.
Absolutely. It tackled huge themes, and many of them, especially the chaos and the fragmentation, feel more relevant than ever. Stephenson himself points to the two biggest challenges we face now:
Which are?
carbon, the climate crisis, and the intense polarization of society. And you can see how his current work with Lamina One is trying to address aspects of both.
Yet, even though his fiction often paints these quite dark dystopian pictures, there's usually a thread of, maybe not optimism, but possibility.
I think so. He's reflected on why reality sometimes turns out, well, maybe slightly less bad than the worst sci-fi predictions, and he often puts it down to human creativity.
Creativity is the wild card.
Exactly. It's the unpredictable element. It's hard for anyone, even a sci-fi writer, to fully anticipate the novel solutions or positive turns that sheer human ingenuity can produce. He suggests it's often easier to foresee the problems than the surprising fixes.
That's a hopeful note. Which brings us to our final thought for you, our listeners. Stephenson warns about the metaverse falling into realism capitalism, just recreating our current world's limits. So here's the question. If you had total freedom to rewrite the rules in a new digital world, what single constraint from our physical reality, like gravity, scarcity, maybe the need for sleep, or even fixed bodies, would you get rid of first? And how do you think removing that one fundamental limit would radically change how humans interact and what they could create?
Yeah, what happens when you break one of those fundamental laws we just take for granted? What kind of society emerges then? Something to think about.
Thanks for listening.
Until next episode.